So, hello everybody. If I can, it is such a pleasure to be able to welcome you here today, tonight at Book Passage, and to introduce for you somebody who is literally a force in children's literature. He's not just a writer, he is a force and a phenomenon. And I have to say this, because actually I know that he has studied swordplay in Britain. And so if I don't say it, there could be issues. So, no, you know that Mac Barnett is the truly most incredible writer. He is probably one of the funniest men you will ever meet. He is the kindest and sweetest man you will ever meet. And he truly is an incredible force within children's literature. And he can create stuff that makes you howl with laughter. And he can create a book like Extra Yarn that talks to your very soul. There are very few people who can do this, and Mac Barnett is one of them. I am so very happy to introduce Mac Barnett.
All right, hi everybody. How's everybody doing? Yay. Good. Everybody having a good conference so far?
Yay.
All right, good. I love coming to this thing. So yeah, my name is Mac, by the way. I write books. Let's see. They're all in this. If you were wondering what's in the briefcase, it's not going to be like Pulp Fiction. I'll tell you. I'll tell you. Always lead with a Pulp Fiction joke. That's what they tell you in public speaking classes.
Especially school visits.
Yeah, they always go super well. Let's see, this is my first book right here, Billy Twitters and His Blue Whale Problem. This is about a kid who gets a blue whale as a pet, but it's a punishment, and it ruins his life. It's based on a true story. This is called Oh No, or How My Science Project Destroyed the World. This is about a girl who builds a giant robot for the science fair, and it goes nuts, destroys the world. It's based on a true story. Let's see, this is the second book I ever wrote. It's called Guess Again. Oh, there you go. All right. Okay, so you guys know that one. Forget about that. I'm going to tell you a little bit about kind of where I come from when I write books. When I was a kid, I was one of these kids who was obsessed with secret doors, you know, and secret door books. Things like, you know, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Books where a secret door existed and you could just open it up and you would go through to another land, a fictional place. But that was real for me. Like, I really thought that there were secret doors in the world, and I was always looking for them. And you know, that is why I would go, say, through my mom's boyfriend's closet. And by the way, there was no Ice Queen on the other side. There was some weird stuff in his closet that I think my mom should have known about. But I didn't feel like I could tell her. I was a weird kid. I was a weird kid. But I did love those books. Those were my favorite kinds of things, and I was always looking for those kinds of doors. And the fact that I never found a secret door that took me to another land was really one of the great disappointments of my childhood. Which, thank you for laughing at one of the great disappointments of my childhood. That was not a laugh line. But I was lucky enough, as an adult, when I graduated college, my first job was actually working behind a secret door in San Francisco. I worked at this place, 826 Valencia, which is on Valencia Street in the Mission District. It's at 826 Valencia Street. And when I worked there, I worked at a little publishing company called McSweeney's. They were at that address at the time. Now they're just across the street. Also there was a nonprofit writing center started by the same writer, Dave Eggers, who started McSweeney's, where kids could get help with their homework after school. And then also in the front of it was a kind of a weird shop, which maybe some of you have been to. The shop exists because of San Francisco zoning laws. The building was zoned commercial, and Dave, who founded it, he couldn't get a variance to have a nonprofit in there. They were not going to budge. There had to be a commercial space. So to come into compliance with city code, he was like, fine, we'll just build a pirate store. And there was a pirate supply store there. Yep, it's a great independent pirate supply store, which, as you know, as you're here at Book Passage, you know the value of independent businesses. Do not go to Captain Rick's Booty Cove, the big box pirate store competitor, which also will not sell Hachette titles. Yeah, there we go. Audience of 4 for that one. All right, yes. So there's this crazy pirate supply store. So here's what's behind it. It's beautiful. It kind of looks like the belly of the ship. They actually just redid it, but this is what it looked like when I was there. And you can pull out all these drawers. There's crazy stuff in there. There's citrus in a drawer, so you don't get scurvy.
Do they still have the rope?
The mopping, yep, absolutely. You can go in there and ask for a free mopping. Tell them that Max said you could have a free mopping, and they'll give you one. And I'm not going to tell you what it means. You'll find out when you get your free mopping. Eye patches in many colors, because springtime rolls around and you just don't want to have boring black. Let's do it, pirates. Come on. And also, just glass eyes, depending on when you want to handle the eye thing. Also in many colors, but that's a little more practical. I think a light blue glass eye and a light blue eye patch. And I worked there for a few years at the publishing company, and then I went down to LA at the time that they were opening an 826 down in Los Angeles. And my job there was to build one of these stores, because the strange thing was these stores, they discovered after they opened up the pirate supply store, like, they actually started selling pirate supplies. And pretty soon it was paying the rent, and it was also this kind of public space for the city. And for me, the value of it always was when you're going back to work on writing, which is the main reason kids come there, it's going to affect the quality of the work that you do when you walk through this kind of liminal space that's between fiction and reality. You are inside a pirate store, and it's seamless. It is this fictional space in the real world realized, and I think that walking through there before you do your writing, that's an important thing. It's an important step that our students and our tutors have to take every day when they come to 826. So it became clear pretty soon that like when they opened up the second one of these in New York, there was just going to be a store anyway. The store was now an essential part of this nonprofit. So 826 NYC has the Brooklyn Superhero Supply Company, which is a great shop, and they've got like invisibility in a can, secret identity kits, a cape tester, which is like an industrial fan that you can stand on, and then it blows your cape out behind you. You don't want bunching. You don't want bunching with your capes. And then we were the third to open, and one of my jobs, I ran 826 LA for a few years, and I built the Echo Park Time Travel Mart. That's our slogan: whenever you are, we're already then. Our friendly staff is waiting to help you. We have people from all eras. Kind of like 2 pirate era pirates there, but also just 1980s guy on the end. Danny, and a cave woman. There's our Employee of the Month wall, honoring, Genghis Khan got his start. A lot of people don't know, Genghis Khan got his start at the Echo Park Time Travel Mart, and so did Charles Dickens. It's a great place for an entry-level position for historical figures. This is our kind of like back section here. Pharmaceuticals. We've got canopic jars down there so you can store your organs. Patent medicines up there. Shade, that's one of our good ones. You travel back in time and you just plant the seed, and when you travel back, you've got a tree. That's our sunblock. That's like SPF 4000 right there. And then so that's communist soap. It says a very severe type. This is your bar of soap for the year. Oh, that joke didn't go over. With the communists in his eyes. Hey, it's cool, it's cool. Here's our slushy machine on opening night. It broke. We're having this party. It's like this very glamorous party that there was a lot of pressure. It's like, oh, they're throwing like this Los Angeles party, and we're gonna have slushies. That's gonna be great. And our architect was pretty good with machines, so he was setting up the machine, and and something went horribly wrong, and he just got like red syrup all over the front of his nice white shirt. It looked like he had murdered somebody, which was not out of the question with this particular architect. He was, and he was very unhappy, and we didn't know what to do, and now we didn't have our slushy machine, and then my friend just put that sign on that says, "Out of order, come back yesterday." Which was both funnier and cheaper than fixing the slushy machine. So that sign is just still on there. To this day. It's been like 6 years now. Mammoth chunks, those things are like 7 pounds each. They're very large cans, you can't really tell that. There's 100% woolly mammoth meat in there. Barbarian repellent has things that barbarians hate, like soap and potpourri and salad. Dead languages there. Oh, here on the left, leeches, nature's tiny doctors. And on the right is Viking odorant, which comes in a lot of great scents, like sweat and rotten vegetables, pyre ash, toenails is another one. For Vikings who care about the way they smell, because we really believe that Axe body spray is something that you should find on the battlefield and not under your arms. These are robot emotions, so they can buy these chips and they can feel love or fear. Our biggest seller is Schadenfreude, which we were not expecting. We thought that joke was just for us, but that is our lead seller. And then these are some beautiful posters from the golden age of time travel. And behind there, you go, that's one of our guys, and the kids come through every day and they walk through a door that says employees only, and back there is a tutoring center where kids get help with their homework, but they can come with anything. They can come in there and say, hey, you know, I want to make a book of poetry, or I want to make a documentary about a skateboarder in my neighborhood, and we always just say yes, and then we figure out how to do it. And to us, kind of our opening rhetorical gambit to say, yeah, we can do this, we can make that happen is the store too. I was also a kid who was like, you know, always into building forts or a tree house, or like one time I got a big washing machine box, and so I was going to make a little house out of that. And then I would always mess it up. It would never look good at the end. You know, like I cut in the washing machine box, I was going to have those windows that you like push open, and then I cut like on the wrong line, and I had to like duct tape one of my shutters, and it looked terrible. And there was always that gulf between the perfect thing in your imagination and what you actually made. And that's, for me, one of the hardest things about being a writer, is there's that gulf as well, right? And it becomes really hard to set something down on the page, because there often, for me, 100% of the time, is that disappointment. The thing in your head was better than the thing on the page, and it's this tiny tragedy that you have to overcome again and again. And there's no solution to it, you just kind of have to inure yourself to it. And I think it's one of the most terrifying things for writers of any age. And so our kind of, you know, opening statement is like, look, we had this really stupid idea to build a time travel store, and a lot of people put in a lot of work, and it looks good, and it looks right, and it works. And, you know, maybe for us on our side, it was, you know, not the thing that we had in our head, but for people who come in there, I think that it is. Just like a book that you put out, maybe a disappointment to you versus the thing in your head, but is embraced by people in the world. So we did it. We did this silly thing, we put our time into it, and it looks pretty good, and we went for it. And that's what we ask our kids to do, is to make that same journey as writers. So every day after school, kids will come in, and when they finish their homework, they'll work on pieces of writing. And then we publish those pieces of writing too. We publish a chapbook every other month of writing done in drop-in. And this is one of the writing release parties. So these kids come in, their parents all come in, all the tutors are there. We have cake, we drink milk out of champagne glasses, and the kids read, and we have a book release party every other month there. And then the kids get to take their bound books home, and we sell those books in the time travel store. And you know, like it's amazing. Even kids who aren't into writing, as soon as we have one of these parties and they watch somebody else who published something in that book get up there and read, they'll write the next time around, you know? They want to be involved in that community. And for me, I always feel like, and this is something that when I was learning writing in school was always tough. Like, it's not until you have an audience, I think, that writing really makes sense. Any piece of art is just a conversation, right? And it's just a conversation between the person who's making the art and the audience who's reading or viewing that piece of art. I don't know, sometimes people say, like, I just write for myself. I never trust that. I always feel like, you know, it sounds really good to say that, I just make art for myself. So I always think, like, either they're trying to sound good, or they don't know why they're good, or maybe they're not very good. Because you are making art for other people, and I think it's important to have that in mind, particularly when you're writing children's books, because we are not children. We are adults who write for children. And you have to figure out how to talk to that audience, and they are different. Kids' brains work differently. I'm someone who likes to talk to kids, I always have, but like any conversation, what you're writing about has to be something that's interesting to you, something you care about, and it has to be interesting to your audience. And if it's not, then you have to figure out a way to tell it that makes it interesting to your audience. Because if you're more interested in what you're saying than your audience is, that's the definition of a boring person. And so, you've got, like, right about, like, you know, kids who don't ask, like, where do you get your ideas? It's just the stuff you like. It's just the stuff you care about most, and also the stuff you don't like, but you care about a lot. And for these kids, you know, who are told to use sensory language or to spell words correctly, it doesn't make sense until they're writing for an audience, you know? When it's just a spelling test then they have to write, you know, just in this very abstract thing at the end of the week, get 10 words spelled correctly. Like, why? Then why spell right? But as soon as you're like, kids are going to read this, and they're going to need to know the word that you meant, then suddenly you're like, oh, that's why you've got to spell. You know, audience makes everything different. And that is one thing that I would definitely say, if you're interested in writing for kids, is talk to some kids. And to as many different kids as you can. For me, 826 was a great opportunity too, because I got to tell my stories to them all the time. That's kind of how I got my start in this. I wanted to be a writer from the time that I was very young, and I didn't know what kind of writing I wanted to do until I was in college, and that's where I kind of figured out, oh, kids, that's what I want to do. I'd gone through everything, maybe poetry, maybe journalism, maybe big fat novels, but like it was college when I kind of figured it out. There's this quote about art by Pablo Picasso here. It says, "We all know that art is not truth. Art is a lie that makes us realize truth, at least the truth that is given us to understand. The artist must know the manner whereby to convince others of the truthfulness of his lies." I first heard this quote when I was a kid. I'll be honest with you, I loved it. I had no idea what he was talking about. And so, but that's a lot of what I want to talk to you about tonight, is this relationship between truth and lies and fiction and reality. So I was like, how am I going to convey this? And I was like, I got PowerPoint, let's Venn diagram this thing. So there we go. So you got truth and you got lies. And there's no space in the middle, that's art right there, basically. And then I was like, that's actually not very helpful. But for me, the moment that I figured out, actually how I figured out kind of one aspect of the meaning of that quote, it was, I worked at a summer camp when my summers off from college, and I worked there every year, and I loved it. It was a sports-themed summer camp for 4 to 6-year-olds, and I was in charge of the 4-year-olds, which is great because 4-year-olds can't play sports, and neither can I. So, what had happened is, like, the kid would just like dribble a soccer ball through some cones until he got hot and upset, and then he would come under a tree where I was already sitting, and I would tell him a story. And would tell kids autobiographical stories about how on the weekends off from camp I would go home and I would just get into a bubble bath, and then as soon as I was about to relax, the phone would ring, and it was the Queen of England, and she needed a favor, and I had to go recover the crown jewels every weekend. She was always losing them. And then I would basically spy for the Queen of England. And then pretty soon, this amazing thing started happening. Other kids at the camp who were not my campers would come up to me, and they'd be like, "You're Mac, right? You're the guy who spies for the Queen of England." I've been waiting my whole life for somebody to come up to me and answer that question. And it's very exciting. These stories that I would tell them, they were real in this different way, you know. And sometimes it was very practical, very useful. Like, you know, the only break we got from camp was during the day when kids would get their swim lessons. That was the only, you know, you got like 25 minutes while they were taking a swim lesson. And kids, there would always be at least one 4-year-old who was terrified of the pool, and it was like, that is not going to happen. You were going swimming because I need a break. So I would be like, guys, did you know that Finding Nemo was filmed in this pool? And then I'll be really excited to get into the water, to see this place where that story they loved took place. But like the pinnacle of it for me, I'll never forget this. There was this little girl named Riley, who was tiny. She was really small. She was a really sweet kid, and every day at lunch, her mom would pack her some cantaloupe. And she would just take the cantaloupe out and immediately throw it into the ivy. And then she would eat like her fruit snacks and her pudding cup and all the other stuff. And I was like, Riley, you gotta stop throwing your fruit away into the ivy. You gotta eat that. You can't just throw it there. She's like, why? I was like, because when you throw it in the ivy, pretty soon, like that means this whole ivy is gonna be overgrown with cantaloupes. Which is like, I think the moment that I became a children's storyteller and not a children's nutritionist. That was it. That was the fork, and she's like, "No, that's not gonna happen." Now, so she kept throwing her cantaloupe in the ivy every day, and so on the last day of camp, I got up early. I went to the grocery store. I bought a giant cantaloupe, and I put it in the ivy. And then lunchtime rolled around, and I was like, "Riley, why don't you go in the ivy and see what you did?" And she kind of trudged into the ivy, and then her eyes got really wide, and she pulled out this giant cantaloupe that was bigger than her head, and all the kids ran over, and they all rushed over, and they're crowding around her, and then one kid was like, "Hey, why is there a sticker on it?" I was like, that is why you don't throw your stickers in the ivy either. That is littering, and it ruins nature. So we got 2 lessons that day. Pretty good. And Riley, the whole day, she carried that giant melon around with her to all of the sports that she did not participate in, and then took it home at the end of camp, and she was so proud. And Riley knew that she didn't grow a melon in 7 days, but she also kind of knew that she did. And that's a really weird place, but that's that place in the middle, right? Like that place that I'll call here just wonder, right? Or you could call it art, or Coleridge called it the willing suspension of disbelief or poetic faith. But a story, no matter how fantastic, how impossible, if it has some semblance of truth to it, but a semblance of truth, you can believe it and feel real about it. In that place where you know something is real and you know that it's fake. Kids get there so easily, but we get there as adults. In fact, that's exactly what fiction asks of us. That's why we care about characters in books. We know they're not real, but our feelings for them are. And that's why in 2 days people will be flocking to Dublin to take the Bloomsday walking tour and see everything that happened in Ulysses, even though none of it happened. Or people go to London and they visit Baker Street and they go to Sherlock Holmes' apartment, even though 221B is just an address that is painted on a building. It was not an address that existed. It's there after the fact, but we want to make these pilgrimages to see the real spots that these fictional characters lived, existed, breathed, ate, fell over fences. And it's a crazy thing, you know? And it's so exciting to me as a fiction writer Because like I said, that's where I want my audience no matter what. And the fact that kids not only can get to that place, I think, a lot more easily than adults can, but really, they want to be in that place. It, for me, makes kids the best audience for fiction, particularly like real literary fiction that you can write. Because if you think about like what the literary bargain is, it's essentially saying like, I'm going to withhold some of the familiar pleasures that come with just ordinary storytelling that follows all the rules. And instead, what I'm going to give you is something a little stranger that delivers a different kind of pleasure. Kids are more willing to take that bargain on the whole than adults are, I think. And so a lot of books that will seem tough or challenging or strange or experimental, say that's not for kids. In fact, I think you'll find that kids will have a much easier time with it than adults will. Because the entire experience of childhood is experimental. Dinner with your mom has a different set of rules from dinner with your dad, from dinner out with your mom at a restaurant versus like dinner at your house but with your mom's new boyfriend. Those are all different rules that you're learning all the time. Every dinner is a new thing. And as a kid, you're picking up on all these cues. Oh, normally my mom and I can talk about these things, but now this guy's here and he's giving me a weird look because I'm bringing it up. So apparently that's not okay. And you learn to adapt to all of these different social rules very quickly. That's the job of a child. And so a book that does that introduces a new set of rules, a kid's going to be able to figure that out. Of course, the stakes are very high, right? Because if we don't actually deliver on it, if we give kids bad literary fiction, then we've burned them. Because when we're writing, we're exposing kids to the kind of books that will determine the readers they'll be for the rest of their lives. So it's very important. There's great freedom to really write serious, challenging, interesting fiction if you want to. Because there are kids who love all kinds of fiction. Kids are not monolithic. Kids don't love robots. Kids don't love horses. Some kids love robots. Some kids love horses. Children's books is not a genre. Kids have as many different tastes as adult readers do. But the exciting thing is there's still potential. Kids don't know what kind of books they like necessarily, and you could write the strange book that makes that kid a different kind of reader from the one that she would ordinarily be. And that's the exciting thing about this job. And they're great readers for that reason. So I always try to, I think for me, the picture book is a super young form, right? Anything resembling what a modern picture book is doesn't even really emerge until about 100 years ago. It's even younger than that. It's why this weird thing. This isn't soapboxing, although it is a little bit sad when a book wins a Caldecott. The author doesn't get anything, right? The award goes only to the illustrator. And people are always wondering why that is. I think the reason that it is when the Caldecott Award was started in the early 30s, picture books weren't really written at that point. We didn't know how to write picture books. The first winners of Caldecott and the Caldecott Honors were, the book that won is a book of illustrated Bible stories. There's a book of illustrated nursery rhymes, a folk tale. It's all stuff from stories retold or found. And the award really was for the illustrations of these stories that had already been around and existing for children. Randolph Caldecott, who the award is named for, is a British illustrator. His great genius was to take things, take illustrations, take nursery rhymes, illustrate them, and to add something, to make an interesting relationship between the text and image that would somehow change the story. So very famously, I should have a picture of it, but yeah, there's a picture. What is it, Little Baby Bunting, right, is the one where the baby dresses up in a rabbit suit, like in rabbit fur. And so he illustrated this. Maurice Sendak loved this illustration. He was obsessed with it. His illustration, the baby is wearing real rabbit fur, and he sees the rabbit, which is just a moment in the nursery rhyme, and there's this look of recognition and horror on the rabbit's face. And that is a suit made out of me. This is not a cute moment. And that was kind of Randolph Caldecott's contribution to picture books, and it's a huge one. Because picture books are built on that relationship between text and image. And the worst picture book you could have is something like this. That it's oh, and Jimmy woke up early, and then it's here's Jimmy stretching. And it's like, Jimmy walked down the steps, and then it's like, here he is going down some steps. And it's like, then he had his favorite breakfast, eggs and toast. And it's like, here's Jimmy and his eggs and toast. Because the pictures and words are doing the exact same thing. You need to make an interesting relationship. The pictures can contradict the text. They can expand the text. They can diminish the text. They can tell a story that the text isn't even aware of. So that was a big moment, but still, Caldecott was just illustrating other people's stories that had existed forever, and it wasn't until much later that real written stories developed. So we work in a very young form, and there are all kinds of different stories to tell. That's so exciting for me as a writer, and I think it should be exciting to all of you. The form is new, and the rules are still very loose. And as much as there are ideas that there are formulas about ways to write, or here's what the market is doing, and you should listen to that this weekend and take it in, but you should also know that we're much too young as an art form to have orthodoxies. So here's a book I wrote. This is I love to, for me, write books, particularly that, there's this term metafiction, which is just stories about stories. And metafiction is having a moment right now that people are saying that's meta or this meta. And its last big moment, its heyday, was kind of in the 1960s with novelists like William Gaddis or John Barth. But it's really the technique is as old as stories itself. And one metafictive technique is breaking the fourth wall, right? And that's when a character in a play, we borrow it from theater, will turn to the audience and say, I am an actor, these are just rafters. And that's this moment of honesty that I would argue is actually kind of in service of the lies still. You're still trying, it's still an illusion, and you're trying to get the audience to feel a real thing by disarming them with this moment of so-called honesty. But for me, I like to do something a little different. I like to, if I'm going to break the fourth wall, I want fiction to escape from it and kind of colonize the real world. That's what the time travel store was for me, is this outpost of fiction in the real world. But books can be that too. They can be secret doors that open and let the fiction out. So this book, clearly on the line, it starts off, so this first page, it says, "This is me, Mac, I'm the author of this book." So a little claymation version of me that was, I feel like was very harsh on me. I don't even have any lips. Thanks, Adam. It says, "This is my friend Adam, he's the illustrator of this book, and this is Chloe, she's the main character of this book." So in this story it says, "A huge lion leapt out from behind an oak tree, and Adam draws a dragon. So we get into a fight, and then I hire a new illustrator, and I have a lion eat him. And then eventually I fire everybody, and I do the illustrations myself, and they get terrible. And kids will ask me, younger kids will ask me, did Adam really get eaten by a lion? But kids up to 5th, 6th grade will ask, did Adam really get fired? And to me, that's not, it's cute, but that's the kid brain working the right way, Because a kid is absolutely smart enough in early elementary school, late elementary school, absolutely, we know by that age, of course. If Adam got fired, that would not have been recorded in the pages of a picture book, right? It would have just been a different illustrator. Certainly, if Adam got eaten by a lion, it's not like this is a camera that we can't turn off. That wouldn't have been recorded, but still, it's a story that they're involved with in this emotional way. Yeah, Adam did get eaten by a lion, and he didn't. Yeah, he did get fired, and he didn't. Both things simultaneously. And to me, when a kid comes up and asks that, I'm like, that is my story working right, but it is also a reader working the right way, holding those two realities, one of which is fake, in their head at the same time. That's just a bucket of my heads. That's not on there for any other reason that freaks me out, and I want to share the misery with all of you. So, another book that I wrote with a friend of mine named John Sheska, who is kind of one of the pioneers of metafiction in children's books. He did a book called The True Story of the Three Little Pigs, which is fantastic, about the three little pigs, but it's the wolf side of the story. And has gotten many imitators since, or the Stinky Cheese Man, which is coming out on 25 years. This is 25-year anniversary. That's the book that made me want to write picture books. I read that one in college at that summer camp, and I was like, if stuff like this, daring, weird stuff can come out for kids, then stuff that I have in my head might have a chance. And he and I wrote a book together, and I'll tell you just a little bit where it came from. It starts with this, of course. I'm sorry. So here's the Mona Lisa by Leonardo. Then, of course, Duchamp did LHOOQ, which is just the Mona Lisa in black and white as a copy with a mustache drawn on her. And Salvador Dali just made it like his mustache and his eyes, but basically just did the same thing Duchamp did. Oh yeah, and his hand. Right. Here's Jasper Johns. Andy Warhol. Basquiat. And so we saw the same thing, this painting reused, incorporated, and defaced, right? That mustache, but Duchamp here at the, as really like a father of modern art did what a kid does in a textbook. Draws a mustache on it. Here's another reason to draw mustaches on things. These are dictators, images of dictators from the Arab Spring, and just the ways that their images have been defaced. So defacement can be an artistic act or a political act. Of course, it's just something that a kid does. So this is hard to read here, but this book, it says, "The Adventures of a Brownie is not very good." And that book is Flannery O'Connor's. That was hers when she was a kid. She wrote that. And she had very good penmanship. So that is her defaced book, her editorial comment in there. Her act of protest, right? Or here's a little, it's international, this is Vietnamese. I love that one. Good little addition. Can do that in there. Oh, here's that's from a swimming instruction. I like this one a lot. The wolf is eating a rabbit in a science textbook, and then this guy with a mohawk is going, "Fluffy?" It's sad. Punks have feelings too. And this is my favorite. It says, "Ms., I can't read the question. There's a bear in the way." And there's a bear drawn over his quiz question. That kid deserves an A. And got an F. I'm sure. I don't know that. But I'm sure it did. And then here's some of the crazy things that, like, when we go around and kids will come and show us. This crazy, like, classic, just like these war scenes that sometimes boys will come up and show us, and just everything is happening at the same time in one shot, so that like a rocket is being launched and then the bullet is like both being fired and hitting a plane while an explosion happens below. But the text was incredible. This is this comic that a kid made, and he called it Stickman, and he was in 3rd or 4th grade, and he had a fan base in his class, and he would release one issue, and it would get passed around like a samizdat, you know, among these kids who loved it. And luckily, his teacher was really cool, and she got it, despite the fact that like this is a very violent comic. But if you look at it, like the atomic army is trying to shoot our airships down. They shot a fighter down. We are meeting some air resistance. They are using missiles and AA turrets. 2 fighters are gone on our side. And then AA has an asterisk, and then up there it says anti-aircraft. So he's using footnotes in this thing. Or look at this. This is like, I am walking on Highway 9 and trying to find the nukes at Fort Albany. It feels warm in this part of the wastes. I will sleep for the night. That's good. I love this. Here's a copy of the New York Times announcing that the war is beginning. Look at this. That's the thumb. That's a guy's thumb holding a copy of the New York Times. And then there's an advertisement, World War III, buy war bonds now, $200.
Wow.
Like, he's using all kinds of crazy storytelling techniques in this thing. Despite the fact that it is violent. Here's the President of the United States. He's got this guy hostage, wants him to work for him. It's a very plot-heavy moment here. He's refusing. So he goes, I'm going to shoot you then, and then he goes, oh, and then it's just like curse words asterisk out. So, you know, like I think there are people who would see this and be like, you can't do this. But that would be a mistake. There's a complexity and an intelligence and a driving force behind this kind of storytelling, and it was being passed around to these other kids. And it's such a shame to me too, and this isn't just books like this. In all kinds of ways, there are stories that kids have a hunger for, and there are the stories that they tell, and things that they talk about, or even things that happen to them, that can't be in kids' books. And I don't really have a solution for this, but it's an interesting way, it's an interesting fact of this art. There are all kinds of things that happen in kids' lives that gets tough to talk about. And no books were being written for this kid like this. So he was making them and passing them around, and that's how he solved the problem. And it was great to see that, you know. My little brother, he just graduated 8th grade, so he's much younger than I am, but when he was in 2nd grade, there were some kids who started a swearing club at his school. He told me he was not in the swearing club, and I actually believe him. He would not have joined. But my dad and my stepmother were horrified about this swearing club, and I was just like, this is amazing. I wanted to write about it. Because in 2nd grade, these kids, there were not that many swear words. What do they do at the 2nd club meeting? And these are good kids. They're swearing within the context of a club. And when they ran, I was pretty sure it was going to have to be a service component. They were going to become like Rotarians soon. Because what do you do once you've said all the swear words? And I wanted to write about this, and I knew that it would be tough. There's still, you know, there'd be ways that you could adjust, but like here was something that was going on, and it had been going on for a year at that point, so in a 1st and 2nd grader's life. And it's something that I think we don't want to think about kids doing, but again, it's kids being kids, but also having swearing clubs. They're able to do both of these things at the same time. And again, you know, these two kind of opposing realities that they are able to put into their head at the same time. And oftentimes, because kids do not have a lot of spending power, our audience is adults, and that's fine too, but oftentimes we are writing books that are for what adults hope kids are like, rather than what their lives are actually like, and that's tough. So this was an encouraging thing to see. Here's another. This is an egg blowing up another egg. This is from like the most hippied out school in New York, Bank Street School of Education, and you know, egg wars are going on there. Or here's my Christmas nightmare. So, John Sheska and I, in his backyard, we wrote a very sweet book called Birthday Bunny. And it's a very sweet story about a bunny who wakes up on his special day, his birthday, but nobody remembers it's his birthday. So his friend Crow forgets, and Squirrel and Bear and Turtle and Badger, they all forget it's his birthday, so he gets very sad. And he sits on a tree stump. And then there's a rustling in the bushes behind him, and there's a surprise party at the end. And we finished it, and it's not a very good story, because that story's been written a million times before, you know, and for us, you know, when we tell kids that, like, kids will guess that it's a surprise party immediately. And you know on page 1 that there's going to be a surprise party at the end, which is just lethal. It's the exact opposite of what you want as a writer when you're creating that story. There's nothing less surprising than a surprise party, right? And that's a real problem. The surprise party has lost its power, but that's all right, because this is not the book that we put out. See, what we did is we made it look like a kid got a copy of this book for his birthday, and he didn't like it very much, so he took Birthday Bunny, and he took his pencil and he changed the illustration, and he changed the text, and he turned it into Battle Bunny, which is a story about a bunny who wakes up on his birthday with evil superpowers and tries to destroy the earth. So I thought, yeah, I mean, we will do, this is the best, this book is really best heard in duet. Although it is dangerous. The last time 2 people tried to read this book at the same time, they spontaneously combusted. So just so you know, yes.
Thanks for the warning.
Absolutely. Yeah. We have water ready though.
Good.
So you've requested you would like to do
Evil
Battle Bunny, right?
Whichever you prefer.
What do you want to do? You do it.
I mind. Which you?
Take a pick. Alright, there we go. So I will read the sweet original Birthday Bunny story while at the same time Amanda reads
Battle Bunny.
So, here we go. We'll do it in concert. We'll read you just a few pages of it. Bunny woke up from a night of pleasant dreams. Today is a very special day, he thought. Today is my birthday. Today I am not just a bunny, I am the Battle Bunny! Good. Birthday Bunny made himself his favorite breakfast, carrot juice and a bowl of greasy guts. My birthday is the most special day of the year because I get super birthday powers over all my enemies. And I get to put my evil plan into action. Who will be the first to try and stop me? Birthday Bunny started on his evil plan. Hopping through the trees. On the way, Birthday Bunny met Crow. Hello, Bunny, said Crow. Today is your unlucky day. That is so true, said Birthday Bunny. Because today I'm going to whomp on you, bird brain, and I'm going to pluck you like a sick chicken. Brown Bunny is up to something no good. Oh, thanks, Alex. I'll put my best agents on it. Crow swooped down. I am saving shiny pebbles from my sparkly nest. And I have just finished my collection. My Megatron bombs! Oh, no, said Battle Bunny. You will not stand in my way. Battle Bunny wants Crow into the stratosphere. Said Crow, spinning off into the sky. There it is, there's the cover of Battle Bunny. And what we did is we put this story on the original Birthday Bunny. We just put that online for free for kids to just print out, and they can turn it into whatever bunny stories they want to make. And then they send us pictures of what they make, and we put those online too. So here's Ninja Bunny with his glowing red eyes. Well, I love this one, Bedtime Bunny. There's the whole book, he just wants to go to sleep, and he's wearing a sleep mask. And he's going zzz. And this is the best part, at the climax. He goes, I have a very sleepy speech to make. Monster Bunny. Rainbow Bunny. Costume Bunny. I like this one. Costume Bunny. These are, by the way, these are all the paparazzi behind Costume Bunny. You can see the little camera. They're always taking pictures of her amazing outfits. And at the procession of gifts, it says, Badger gave Bunny a drum made out of a log with lots of outfits. You know, just a drum with lots of outfits made from a log. Oh yeah, Robot Bunny. Oh yeah, we won't get it. And it was great. We went around the tour. We went around on tour for this, and we would have these birthday parties with kids, and we would go into the library. And we made a video, John and I, where we smashed cake into our faces, and kids got really excited about that. So we would smash cakes into people's faces sometimes at the tour, or sometimes into our own. Like one time we had a little lunch, and the librarian came around and put a piece of cake in front of every kid and said, do you want hands or fork? And some kids would say fork, and some kids would say hands. And then we all sat there, and there was this really queasy moment of silence, and we knew what was going to happen. And then this kid just went nuts. He just goes, and got the cake on his face, and it was like somebody yelling food fight, just like pandemonium broke loose, and just like 90 seconds in, there's this kid with cake smeared down both sides of his face, and two fists in the air, and he goes, living the dream! Just a genius of kids. There's another school where the kids who wrote the best bunny stories, the principal, she let them smash cake into her face. So the principal came up for her anyway, and she was so put together. She had just this beautiful, elegant outfit. And she came up there, and the kids were freaked out. And she was like, go for it, go ahead. You wrote the best story. And so they got to put cake in her face. And we were just like, that is amazing. We were in the bathroom wiping up with one of the boys afterward, and we were like, oh, was that just so amazing to smash cake in the principal's face? And he just looked a little ashen, and he was like, I'm kind of freaked out. And I'm like, what? He goes, I touched the principal's tooth. Is that not the weirdest thing that could ever happen? There's like one of these details that you're like, oh man, that's insane to touch a principal's tooth. That is the craziest thing that could ever happen. But here's a book I made. This is my first book, Billy Twitters and His Blue Whale Problem, and this one for me, this is about, like I said, the kid gets his blue whale delivered overnight. It's delivered by Fed Up, delivering punishment for a while. And he has to take it to school with him. He lives in San Francisco, very tough city to have a whaler. A lot of hills. This market is crazy. Real estate is at a premium. Are we in another bubble? I don't know, guys. But underneath the jacket on the case is this advertisement. For a blue whale, and it says special offer, and it says if you send us a self-addressed stamped envelope, we will send you a blue whale for a free 30-day risk-free trial. And if you're not happy at the end, just send the whale back and we'll handle all the postage. And then there's an address, and kids will write to this address. So here's a letter that I got. It says, Dear people, I bet you $10 you won't send me a blue whale. Elliot Gannon, age 6. And what Elliot and anyone who writes gets back is a letter from a Norwegian law firm that says that due to a change in customs laws, your whale has been held up in Sognefjord, which is a very nice place. It's a green fjord, it looks very nice against this blue skin. That kind of digresses, becomes like a tourist brochure for Sognefjord, talks a lot about Norwegian cuisine, gets back on track. And it says that your whale would love to hear from you. It says your whale's name and gives your whale his phone number where he has a voicemail set up. And the kids can call and it's just whale noises and then a beep. Which is a lot like a whale noise actually, the beep. It's kind of hard to know when to start talking. And also a photograph of the whale. So here's one of the whales. One of the first kids to ever write this is this kid, Nico. And I'll play you just the message that I got from him. Here we go. So this is Nico's first message.
Hello, this is Nico. I'm your owner, Randolph. Hello. So, this is the first time I can ever talk to you, and I might talk to you soon, another day. Bye!
So his whale's name is Randolph, in case you can know. And he actually called back like within 20 minutes. And he left like 3 messages in a row. And he said that his dad said he couldn't leave any more messages because of long distance bills. But then he just called the next day, and then he called after that. He called all the time. Here's another one from Nico.
Hello, Randolph. This is Nico. I haven't talked to you for a long time, but I talked to you on Saturday or Sunday. So now I'm calling you again to say hello, and I wonder what you're doing right now, and I'm going to probably call you again tomorrow or today. Bye.
So we find out all these things about Nico. He called all the time. We started to learn about his life. He's super into crossword puzzles. We found out about his grandma that he loves so much, and also that his grandma that he likes a little bit worse than the other grandma. Here's a nice message from Nico. This is one of the last ones.
Hello, Randolph. Sorry I haven't talked to you in a long time. It's just that I've been so busy because school started, as you might not know, probably don't know. And I'm calling you to just say, to wish you a Merry Christmas. So, have a nice Christmas, and bye-bye. Randolph, bye.
So this was in 2009. that he started this. Wait, no, I'm sorry. 2010 is when I got the first from Nico, I think. And he left 25 messages total. And the last one was he stopped about a year and a half ago. And 2 days ago, he called again. And it was really short. He just put his babysitter on the phone, and his voice is totally different. He was on the phone, and she said, Randolph, you have a lovely voice, and I hope you're having a good time, and I hope you're not in an aquarium. Do you live in an aquarium? And then you can hear Nico getting really upset, and you hear him go, he lives in a fjord. So that was amazing. I was floored to hear from Nico again. You know, like kids like Nico, they're the very, very best kinds of readers, and they deserve the very best stories that we can tell. So that's all I have to say. But I would love to answer any questions you guys have. So we have time for that. Yeah, in the front.
Try to illustrate your next book, even though it might not be the best that's in my head. Yeah. It still might be the best that's in yours.
Can you illustrate my book? Yeah, it might be the best that's in mine. I like that. A little swagger in that question.
But the real question is, since you worked at the Time store,
yeah,
why is it that you've never had read the headline that Psychic won the lottery?
Oh, Psychic won the lottery. That is good. That is good. No, I mean, I think because we didn't have really psychics in the time travel world. You know, we
were denied access.
Yeah, they weren't really part of our cosmology. One of my favorite things we did though, have you been there? Have you been to the store? We have
not that one.
We have yesterday. We have two things. We do have headlines in the store. We have yesterday's news and tomorrow's headlines, and they're just running tickers that have news headlines from the past and news headlines from the future. Let's go. Maybe we'll put it in there, and you can come and demand your royalty from a nonprofit. Everybody will know you're a villain. Yes.
So, did you ever feel guilty that Randolph didn't call Nikki back?
No. He didn't need to. It was clear. Actually, well, no, and I didn't call back. Actually, Randolph did talk to Nico a little bit. He sent Nico a stuffed whale for Christmas one year, and also he got a letter from a lighthouse keeper in Sogninfjord who would just talk about how happy Randolph was when he would hear Nico's messages. But he didn't need Randolph to call back. It was clear from his messages, like he would talk about things that Randolph had done that he just made up in his head. Nico was fine. He was running that fiction for himself at that point, and he didn't need us. Yeah, there was just, I did have to call though at one point that when I sent that letter from the lighthouse keeper, I had thrown away his address, so I needed to call this number that was coming in. So I called. This is gonna be the weirdest call. And his mom picked up the phone, and I was like, hi, look, is this Nico's mom? And she's like, yeah. And I was like, okay, this is gonna sound super weird. I wrote a book called Billy Twitters and His Blue Whale Problem, and Nico has a whale. And she's like, oh yeah. She's like, Nico's in the car right now. And she's like, Nico. I was like, no, don't tell him, don't tell him. And he's like, Nico, I'm on the phone with the guy who wrote Billy Twitters and His Blue Whale Problem. And I was like, it's over, it's ruining it. And you just hear him go, oh. Like, he owns a blue whale. Like, why does he care? Like, I love that at 4 too. You're like, of course the guy who wrote Billy Twitters and His Blue Whale Problem calls my mom. It's in the book. I like that book. We read it all the time. He probably calls my mom just to check in. But yeah, no, I didn't feel it. And I feel like he was a special case, and so he got some feedback back. But I've gotten probably 500 letters, and of those letters, like about 100 messages. So yeah, and the kids clearly, like, you know, at that point too, the kids can handle it. Their parents can if they want to get involved. But yeah. I'm always amazed at kids' ability to create the stories and take the fiction for themselves as well. Yes.
Can you talk a bit about how you pick or how the process happens that you get an illustrator working with you?
Sure, absolutely. The process of getting an illustrator. So, typically, and you may have heard this weekend, is the author has no say over who illustrates a story. So when I send a story in, it's sold, it's just a Word document, and typically what happens is the publisher will match up an illustrator with that manuscript, and in your opinion is basically not listened to or sometimes considered, but doesn't have a whole lot of sway. For me, I tend to really want to weigh in on that, and did from my first book, and I feel like you get one thing that you get to be kind of like crabby about before you're called difficult. I may have had more than one thing and get called difficult, but that's definitely one of my things. So like this book, Extra Yarn, this is illustrated. John is one of my best friends, and so we have another book coming out together, and then we'll be doing another one. And when that happens, it's just like John and I have a book. Adam Rex, who did Billy Twitters, he's illustrated about half of my books that are out now, and he's a very close friend. We just come in and we'll say we'll do it together. Sometimes though, I'll have a manuscript. I would say about 80% of the time, I either say like, here's who's going to do it, or here's who I would like to do it. And then 20% of the time say like, yeah, who should we get for this? But then even during the process, we're not supposed to talk to each other. And that's even true of like, John and I were not supposed to talk during this. But of course we do, and we send secret emails behind the editor's back. But what's supposed to happen is, what happened is like, I call up my editor and I say, please tell John this. And then she calls John and tells him whatever she wants to. And it's like that game Telephone, you know, where you're passing a message along and it changes as it passes through so many people. But it doesn't change because of so many people. It changes just because of one person.
Because you talked to him and he said, oh,
yeah, and they put us off. Yeah, and it'll pass through that one kid, and maybe one of you was that kid. And it'll be some beautiful message. It'll be like, the robins have laid their eggs, the robins have laid their eggs, the robins have laid their eggs, and I guess that one kid, and it's like, your mom is a vacuum cleaner. That kid grows up to become an editor. And they mess with our messages. And so yeah, we caught them doing it. But like the next book that John and I have coming out, it was crazy. Like we would just open up an audio line on GChat for hours every day and be talking about the book and changing things around, and he would want to change a thing, and there was one moment that there's an image, and it ended up being really, he wanted to just set up an image and we had to change the story, so like I would give new words for it, and yeah, it was the most collaborative experience I've had, and it really, you know, a lot of the books I love books that were written in the 50s and 60s. That to me was kind of last great golden age of American picture books. And those, you know, like, Maurice Sendak would be like sleeping on Ruth Krause's floor, you know, like everybody was hanging out together, and then they'd go into the office and the editor and art director would be there and they'd be discussing things and feeling the paper. We'll never be where we were then, but we can get closer to that. And yeah, so this next book with John, it was cool. I've never written a book that way before, and I'm happy. We're really excited with how it turned out. Yeah. Yes?
Do you have any plans for any more middle grades?
Do I have any plans for more middle grades? Yeah, so I read a middle grade series called The Brixton Brothers, which is not, I don't have a new book for that coming out, but a new book is coming out in January called The Terrible Two that I wrote with a friend of mine named Jory John, who wrote that book. And you see, it's not a kid's book, it's called All My Friends Are Dead.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it has a very a cute dinosaur on the cover looking sad. So he and I have a middle grade series that we're starting up, and that'll start in January.
And does that refer to Enid Blyton in any way?
No. Wait, does Enid Blyton have a Terrible Two?
No, she had the Secret Seven and the
Famous
Five.
Yes. So it's definitely, I knew that she had the Secret Seven. Yeah. So we wanted to have that kind of classic feel that way.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's fun.
Yeah, but I actually didn't even know about Enid Blyton until I started going. I went to Sri Lanka, and then kids were like, I mean, she's so huge across the world. especially anywhere that Britain like set up shop for a few decades.
Yes.
But yeah, like she's not really a big thing here, but it's so huge everywhere else. Yeah.
So, do you prefer writing with somebody else versus writing on your own, or?
No. I mean, do I prefer writing on my own or with somebody else? I like collaborating. With Battle Bunny was just like, John and I were just in his backyard making each other laugh, and that was a fun thing. I like collaborating. Every picture book is a collaboration, you know. I leave every picture book, your job as a picture book writer, if you just write. By the way, how many people here are like interested in just writing picture books? And how about illustrating picture books? And how about writing and illustrating picture books? Okay, so if you're just writing picture books, one of your big jobs is to create opportunities for an illustrator to look good. You're writing in a visual medium. And when I finish a picture book text, I make sure that it doesn't make any sense. Like, it shouldn't make sense until the illustrations are in there. So, to me, picture book illustration is writing, and decisions that a writer would make are made by the illustrator. What characters look like, what setting looks like, you know? All those things that you're taught are good writing are not really a part of picture book writing. You take all that stuff out. Visual description is basically absent. If it's in there, and at least in one of my books, you know that like it was really important that I have it in there for some reason, because otherwise I strip that out. It is not my job. And the best thing you can do is create an opportunity for a page turn that is just like a 2-page spread, maybe even wordless, that pays off a joke or gives a crucial moment in the plot or just does something. Because I think in those moments, like in a lot of very sublime moments, there's no room for words anyway, and you can make that happen in picture books. So I like collaborating that way. Collaborating on a novel is a different kind of thing, and a big part of it was figuring out how we did it. Sometimes we were writing in the same room, sometimes it was just one person writing. But I like doing both, but it's important to me to have things that I'm just working on for me sometimes too. Yeah. Yes?
Well, I have a reprimand and a question.
Great! Love being reprimanded. Let's do it.
The reprimand is how dare you speak of Enid Blyton that way.
Oh my goodness! Wow. An off-the-cuff reprimand. Yeah, I'm sorry.
And the question is, how did you meet John Sheska?
How did I meet John Sheska? So I actually, this is crazy. So, like I said, I was working at that summer camp and loved The Stinky Cheese Man. And I went back to school. My first idea for a picture book that I ever had was not Billy Twitter's, it was Chloe and the Lion. And I was telling all my friends about it, and they'd say, like, this sounds crazy. This book's insane. Like, kids can't get this. And I was like, no. Like, kids can get this stuff. There's this book called The Stinky Cheese Man. And so that just became part of, like, as a caveat I just put in there. And I was like, I had been wanting to write books ever since I read this book called The Stinky Cheese Man. And one of my good friends, I was just having breakfast with her. I have breakfast with her like once a week, and she's like, you know my dad wrote that book, right? And I had no idea because I never knew how to say John's name. It's S-C-I-E-S-Z-K-A. So that was my least favorite part of Stinky Cheese Man. And I'd be like, The Stinky Cheese Man by John Schroeder. It's by this guy John. Yeah, it's a good John. It's a classic John. And we called her Sheska. We would just call her by her last name, but I didn't know how to spell that. And so the next day she said, I told my dad about your book and he wants to read it when you're done. And it was a little over a year before actually no, it was about a year after that I finished my first book. But in the meantime, when he came and visited, I met him and we were corresponding. And so I sent him Billy Twitter's, and he said, this is great, I'm going to send this to my agent. And the next day, his agent called me and said, I like this book and I think we can sell it. So it was a really crazy thing. It's kind of like I've got this double debt to John where he's both the reason I decided to write kids books and basically the only reason it happened. Because I can tell you at age 21, it's such hard work, like, and the hard work that you're doing right now and in here and figuring out how to put a manuscript together and then how to query agents and stuff, it's definitely something that I don't think I could have done at 21. And were it not for John, I would have just gone off to become a medievalist, which was my plan. Which I think would have been okay too. Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
So many Renaissance fairs, though.
Yeah, well, that's Ren's a little different than medieval, right? It's a little late. I'm not early modern.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, Dream of the Rude over here. Yeah.
Do you have a
a daily writing practice?
Do I have a daily writing practice? No, it's terrible. I don't. I am like, I don't even have like a monthly writing practice. My daily writing practice is just like vast stretches of just me sitting around, like looking at my dog. Like I will carve out time to write and be like, I gotta write, especially if I'm on deadline, and then I just won't write. I basically only write when I'm inspired or I'm contractually obligated to write. And even the second one doesn't always happen. And it's no good. I really admire people who have daily writing practices, and I think there's no secret, and I'm not advocating my method, but I'm not sure that my writing would be better if I did, and I think it might be worse. There have been times where I'm like, I'm going to get it together, and granted, they're very short-lived experiences, but they didn't go well. So I don't, but I really admire people who do, but I think, yeah, you've all got to just figure out the thing that works for you, and to do that, I think you try a bunch of different things. But no, I don't, and you know, I don't have anything to say to that. I'm just trailing off because I'm just feeling terrible. Thanks. This is like that time everybody laughed at one of the great disappointments of my childhood about 50 minutes ago. Yeah.
So when you were working at 826, did you collect any cool pirate stuff?
Did I collect any cool pirate stuff working at 826? Yeah, I got some cool books and a message in a bottle. Those were good ones because the messages were all handwritten and just weird one-off sentences. I don't know if they still are selling those, but you get a bottle, a beautiful bottle, and there'd just be some strange kind of cryptic message in it. Yeah, cool. Yeah. But they've got great stuff: peg legs, pirate flags, all kinds of stuff.
I gotta get there.
You gotta get there. Yeah. Yes, summer.
So if you don't have a regular...
Back to that.
No, which is great.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yes, absolutely.
The question is, so what does inspire you? Do you walk around with a notebook? I mean, you must have moments when you have flashes and you want to write.
Yes, I do.
You want to write. So
yeah, because stuff gets written, so that means that it's happening, right? Yeah.
It's not all just a conversation in backyard.
Yes.
So do you wait for that inspiration to happen?
Yes.
How do you capture it? How do you know?
So I wait for that inspiration to happen, and then I get really excited, and I know it. I know when an idea is alive. And for me too, I think because I started doing this by telling stories out loud to kids, and a lot of picture books are also told that way. I will circle back to this, but they're like, when I was taking those stage combat classes in England, which by the way, both armed and unarmed stage combat I was certified in, and tumbling. That was ugly. I did not get a good grade in tumbling. But I also took a voice class. I was at a conservatory there, a theater conservatory. I took a voice class, and my voice teacher said something that really stuck with me. She said there are basically 3 levels of engagement, 3 levels that you use your voice. There's one-to-many, one-on-one, and one just with yourself, right? And those are the 3 levels to be engaged in the world. And she said, and I don't know if this is true, it feels maybe a little pop-sci, but it feels right, that most people are only good at 2 of those 3 things. And then there was also this little romantic caveat of like, a romantic relationship is actually the circle of 1. Oh, that's beautiful. But books are the same way. Those levels of engagement are the same. And one reason that picture books are better than people is that some picture books can work on all 3 of those levels. But they don't have to, and a good picture book doesn't have to either. But there's one-to-many, very common way, a teacher or a librarian in front of a classroom. There's one-on-one or one-on-2, right? A child or a couple kids curled up on a lap looking at a book, more intimate reading. There's one-on-one. There are picture books that are really meant to be read or looked at by kids on their own, wordless picture books, and even some picture books with very simple texts, or picture books that kids will memorize a text very quickly, and there'll be intricate things in there that are just designed for kids to stare at pictures much longer than a parent would have patience waiting around for. But a picture book can have all 3 of those things and all 3 of those levels of engagement, but they don't have to, and different picture books do different things. But for me, I would often be telling kids, stories out loud, and big groups of kids too. There was one day that it just got like too hot for anybody in the camp to do sports, so it was literally 400 kids, and their idea was like to give them all an otter pop and then to have me come and tell them a story. And I was like, what is, you guys are not paying me enough. I am making $7 an hour, and this is like Dante's 7th ring here. It's still a pretty good ring, the 7th ring. We're not really getting close. Do they go in or out? I don't know. Because of that, it was really good for me, actually. I internalized this rhythm of how to keep attention, and I use that in a lot of my books. Are meant to be read out loud. Not all of them are, but the ones that are, I think because of that, I tend to often talk a picture book through with a friend of mine. I'll call and kind of talk it through and tell it through once to 1 or 2 friends, and then I'll sit down and write it after giving it kind of like an oral recitation where I'm also kind of writing on the fly. And I'm feeling where I know my audience would get bored if they were 400 hot kids with an otter pop, and I'm looking at my interlocutor's face and seeing when she's getting bored, and I'm like, okay, this is the part I have to cut. So there'll be a couple oral storytellings before I write it down, and yeah, some books kind of will die in those storytellings, but the ones that make it through get written. Yes! Uh-oh. What do we got? Rebuttal or flattery?
Well, I have another reprimand in mind.
Oh yeah, reprimand. So you got another. No, we'll take it though.
But here's the question: what do you do with the inspiration that you find that you don't use?
Sure.
Do you tell another friend, or do you just kind of store it away for some other use?
I kind of store it away, yeah. And actually, that happened with one of my books. I wrote a book called Count the Monkeys, and that one I wrote a first version of, and it didn't really work, and I forgot about it. And then I was looking through an old notebook, and I saw it, and I said, oh yeah, this book was bad, but now I know how to fix it, and I didn't know how to fix it then. And yeah, it's true. I did take the monkeys out. And I was happy with how the book came out. And it was one of those things that you hear, those stories that sometimes you hear so much. People will be like, keep everything down in a notebook. Keep your notebooks. Even if you think an idea is dumb, it may look good later. And you're like, yeah. And then that happened to me one morning, and I'm really pleased with that book. So yeah. Yeah.
With the whale book, did you have, I only got to look at it briefly, but did you have a, like, say, educational goal to it, and was it, and if so, how did you, again, because I didn't unfortunately get much time to read it, how did you balance that between, making it entertaining, making it educational?
Did I have an educational goal for the whale book was the question, and no, I didn't. I have a lot of whale facts in there, but they're only in there because they were useful to me narratively. So at one point the teacher is giving a lecture. The teacher cancels a movie about cowboys because he's so excited that there's a whale in the classroom. So he cancels the cowboy movie and he gives them a lecture about blue whales. And there are a lot of whale facts in there, but they're in there only to show what a boring lecture is like or to be disgusting and to get the class upset. But there are, like, for other reasons, and then some of the whale facts about like what they eat or how big they are were really important to showing kind of how this story worked and why this punishment was so awful. But that's why they were there. In fact, there are a lot of scientific facts in there that are given for narrative reasons, and they're all true except for one I just made up because I needed it for the narrative. So it's actually, yeah, I'm not going to even say which one it is. It's just sitting there like a grenade. And all these kids think they know something, and they don't. They'll be embarrassed at dinner parties, laughed out of their Paris Review internships or something in years from now. Yeah. And that's the sad note that we'll end on.
Can you talk about President Taft?
Can I talk about, yeah! All right, sure. So let's see. Do I have a copy of that?
Right behind you, man.
Classic. So this is my newest book right here. And this one for me is really kind of right in that thing of fact and fiction. There are all these presidential biographies that come out. And to me, I'm skeptical of picture book biographies. There's some great ones, but it's a tough form. And if any of you were thinking of writing one of those, I think the key to remember is that you're writing a picture book. So many of them try to stuff so much information about a life. And so you end up with really text-heavy pages, and you're not taking advantage of layout, of page turns, and page turns are the basic building block of picture books. A 32-page picture book is, after front matter's out of the way, about 14 page turns. You have to use the form of a picture book to tell a presidential biography. And so there are all these kind of staid biographies that come out every President's Day about Abraham Lincoln and George Washington. And my dream is just to have this guy sitting on the table next to him. That's the fact that I had always heard about Taft, right? I was a big presidential fact kid. And Taft got stuck in his bathtub at the White House. And it turns out that may not have even happened, but it's a story that we've been telling about him for 100 years. And so that's really interesting to me, that line between, whether this is a fact or not. I love that, and how these stories can kind of become real and even part of the historical record. Again, that this isn't something that kids just do. I also kind of loved it in this way of just, the vagaries of history, that one embarrassing thing that doesn't even happen can be the only thing that you're remembered for. And my book does not help that problem at all. But then they always have to have, for me too, this arc. I mean, on the one hand, it's just a funny story about a president being stuck in the bathtub, but I'm so fond of Taft. To me, weirdly, of any of my picture book characters at least, I'm probably most similar to this guy. I mean, his big thing is that he's just he won't listen to anybody because he wants to revel in his problem, and then also this is gonna sound so silly, but it's honestly true for me. Each one of my books has something like this, and you don't have to necessarily, you don't need to know this to enjoy it. But this book, I never say what my books are about, but on this one, it's about, to me, the Cartesian mind-body divide. It's about, it's about the fact, and that's why this story is so powerful, because we, a president getting stuck in a bathtub, to be reminded that presidents have bodies, and that they fall victim to their bodies. Anything that humanizes a president is so fascinating to us, and I think it's actually really good democratizing impulse. But here's this person who's so powerful, who's so smart, and his body won't do what he wants it to do. And that's a really, that's a big theme for me. That's something that I think about a lot. And so that's in there too, and I think that's animating. That is why this anecdote has such power, I think. And I definitely tried to throw that into relief a little bit, not because I had any message or wanted to put a point across, but because I think that's what makes the story powerful. And you don't need to know that. Like I said, you don't need to know the chemical composition of rocket fuel in order to be wow, it's really cool to watch a rocket launch, right? And to me, that's kind of the chemical composition of the Taft fact, and I think something that drew it to me too. But then there's also a picture of Taft's butt on page 30 or something, so that's also fun.
Maybe one more, Matt?
Yeah.
Somebody's got another one?
Yeah, if anybody has one more question, we'll take one more. Yes.
Do you still do any, other than this wonderful theatrical performance?
Yeah.
Do you still do any theater?
Do I still do any theater? No. And in fact, the conservatory thing I did was kind of a blip. Like I said, my plan was to become a medievalist, and I did some performance in college. I did some sketch comedy and stuff, but I really, 3 years in, I loved all the reading I was doing and all the analysis and theory, but I just needed to do something else. I needed to engage with the text in a different way, and I wanted to read it and speak it and memorize it and perform it and sword fight during it and do all these other things and kind of refresh the way that I engaged with the text. But no, yeah, basically the only performance I do now is reading books to kids out loud and talking to you guys. But it's a lot of fun to do it. So thank you so much for coming out.